Afternoon. Thank you so much for coming to today's body positivity event. I'm Professor Ragusa, you may know me. My students are sitting up front. The event today is an offshoot of our capstone course on the body. And we're studying the body from conception, fertility and conception actually, all the way to death, and as many topics as we can think of in between. And this week's unit is on the fat acceptance movement, health at every size. We're really interested in body positivity. So today we've invited two nationally known speakers to come talk with us about the work that they've done in art and activism for body positivity. We have memoirist Kim Brittingham, the author of Read My Hips, and we have Substantia Jones, the creator of the Adipositivity Project. So I welcome you all, and without further ado, please give a warm welcome to our memoirist who will be reading today from Read My Hips, Kim Brittingham.
Well, I'm wearing a mic. Can everybody hear me? Okay, great. It was right here in Hartford, a little over 100 years ago, that a really clever guy who called himself Mark Twain lived and wrote. And one of the very clever things he said was, "Travel is fatal to prejudice." And what I always thought he meant by that was that it's so easy for us to have prejudgments and make generalizations about people from a distance. To say all Koreans are blank, all private school kids are blank. But until we actually travel to Korea, or at least to a Korean neighborhood, and get to know those people, or go to a private school or two and mingle with the kids, only then can we really know what we're talking about. And true prejudice falls away. So today you've traveled to the land of the fat ladies, and I thank you for coming. Regardless of what opinion you leave with, at least I'm happy to know that you took the trip and you'll be able to form an opinion based on firsthand experience and not just blind or ignorant prejudice. So thank you for coming. I'm Kim Brittingham. I wrote this book called Read My Hips. Today's presentation is called Size Appeal, Body Positivity Through Art and Activism, right? So the things I'm going to share with you today, I think they are a little bit of both. They're art and they're activism. We might also call it a tale of two paperbacks. One of them is very real, and the other one is fakety fake fake. And we're going to get to why this book exists in a minute. But first I'd like to read to you from Read My Hips, and Professor Ragusa specifically requested that I read part of the introduction, so that's what I'm going to start with. When I was a teenager, my mother took a picture of me standing in front of our house. I stood unsmiling beside a flowering bush. I knew I was bigger and uglier than most girls, but maybe the camera would strike a deceptive angle and make me look pretty. When the picture came back from the developer, I was mortified. I was going to make sure no one ever saw this awful image of me. I stole it from its paper envelope and scurried away to my room. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the semi-gloss print in my hands. I had no idea I was so misshapen. I knew I was pear-shaped, all the women in our family were, but genetics had hung themselves on my frame with an unnecessary flourish of cruelty. My hips ballooned out from my body in freakish contrast to my trim waist. I was an extreme, like those apes with shockingly bulbous red bottoms. I began to cry. My God, I thought, I'm deformed. Clearly I'd have to cover this up. Never again would I wear a shirt or sweater under 32 inches long, or at least not until I fixed this problem. I'd wear tunics and dumpy cardigans and men's button-down shirts 3 sizes too big, just because they covered my hips. I took the photo to my desk, and with a fine-tipped black marker, oh so carefully, I shaved several inches off my hips, applying the ink in parentheses like strokes until I'd blacked out the swells of excess flesh. And it looks something like this. This is the teenage me. Took a black Sharpie and did my best to trim off the excess fat that made me so freakish. What I wanted to look like was what you see here. No curve of the hip, not even a curve of the upper arm, even trimming my face. I sat up straight and regarded the image of myself with a normal body and felt overcome by a surge of shimmering hope. Pure possibility. It coursed through my veins like warm, flowery bathwater. The promise of improvement, of being better than this flabby, self-conscious, blemished sack of flesh I dragged between home and school every day. The suggestion that I might actually become the heroine of my daydreams, it was irresistible. I could make it happen. I'd just go on a diet. I don't ever remember my mother being fat, and yet I clearly remember her dieting. When I was growing up, she read many women's magazines, Red Book, Family Circle, Woman's Day. As a stay-at-home mom, she watched daytime talk shows like Donahue. She was immersed in the popular culture of the day, and so, like millions of other American women, she was exposed to the media onslaught of thinner is better messaging, both overt and covert. There was this glossy 2-page spread of diet tips by Richard Simmons that she'd cut from one of her magazines and taped to her bedroom door. One of his suggestions was to use tiny children's utensils for eating because it would help one ingest less food. Above the type was a photo of a hammy Richard in a red polo shirt with white collar, holding a goofy oversized knife and fork, one in each hand, his mouth and eyes agape in comic exaggeration. We moved around the country a lot, every couple of years or so, and everywhere we went, my mother carefully folded and stowed away her Richard Simmons diet tips, only to unfold and retape them to her bedroom door at our new address. The old tape grew brittle beneath the new, deepening to an unhealthy-looking jaundice color and flaking away. My mother started her diets, and eventually our shared family diets, very gung-ho. There were inaugural trips to the supermarket, during which she stocked up on foods we usually never saw in our house, like cottage cheese. She made lots of sweeping from now on statements. We won't be eating this anymore. We're going to start taking walks every night after dinner. Things are going to change around here. She made charts for each member of the family on which we could track our exercise, and in the case of my brother and sister and me, our chores and our homework too, because sweeping dietary change was usually concurrent with recommitments to pitching in around the house and getting straight A's. At the stationery store, Mom bought multicolored, star-shaped metallic stickers that we could lick and stick to mark our daily victories. She experimented with her blender, and we swallowed things made from powders. She made me get up an hour early and go jogging with my father before school. Jogging made me feel like I couldn't breathe, and I hated being forced into his company. The mood inside my Mork and Mindy lunchbox was dismal. Snap cakes and aluminum peel-top cans of pudding were gone. Sandwiches became wretchedly thin. We were eating special bread now, diet bread from the pink bag, sliced super thin. So you can have 2 slices for the same number of calories as a single slice of bread, my mother enthused. It saves a whole bread exchange on Weight Watchers. Fortunately, the upheavals never lasted more than a week. I'm not sure if my mother if she tired of all the extra effort it took to prepare these diet meals, or if she tired of the bland foods themselves, or of my ceaseless complaining because I'd been coerced into doing leg lifts with her on the bedroom floor. I just know that 7 days later, the mashed potatoes and meatloaf would be back on the menu. The ringdings would return to the pantry, and no one talked about the cottage cheese going rancid in the back of the fridge. We were relieved. We knew Mom would get inspired again eventually, but until that happened, we were keeping our trap shut. It was only a few short years, though, before I'd become a teenager. And then I'd be the one initiating the diets, requesting them, asking for Jane Fonda's workout album for Christmas, and doing leg lifts by myself on my own bedroom floor. I didn't want to be fat anymore. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be immune to the kind of disapproval I read in the eyes of every thin person who ever looked at me. I can't blame my mother for imbuing me with the diet mentality, because we coexisted in the same ugly culture. There was already something wicked at work that was far bigger than either of us, a rapidly burgeoning, manipulative, and self-serving diet industry working from behind a mask of false benevolence. Throughout my teens and adulthood, I enjoyed many moments of triumph on the scale, at home, at the weight loss center, on the big pay scale in the drugstore. But there were just as many moments of frustration, desperation, and deprivation as I undid all the dieting I'd done. Dieting was the express train to, let's see just how fat this girl can get. It sped me through all the way stations along the route, rarely stopping to rest long at any one victorious weight loss. In between, it delivered heartbreaking telegrams via scale that revealed ever-increasing all-time highs. I started at 145 and dieted my way down to a gaunt 128. I reveled in those 128 pounds for 5 minutes before the weight began to creep back up, and just 2 months later I found myself at 155. The pattern continued, down and up ever higher, until one day I peaked at 310. Multiple go-rounds with Weight Watchers, Nutrisystem, and daily home deliveries of Zone diet meals made these companies richer. Sure, they brag that they can fix you, but they never tell you up front about that 1% success rate. And when you fail, it's never their fault. You've got something wrong with you. I used to beat myself up for being such a failure, a repeat failure, unable to control myself. But in recent years, I've read about what dieting does to our minds and bodies. And there's evidence that once we start consciously tinkering with our food intake in an effort to reduce our body size, our bodies pull out every weapon in their arsenals to prevent us from succeeding. It seems no amount of willpower can overcome the body's need to protect us from external threats to the food intake we're used to. Reducing our caloric intake can actually trigger a narrowing of focus in our minds, too, a survival mechanism that makes sure that we obsess about food until we get enough of it. Unfortunately, the whole act of self-deprivation, even mild self-deprivation, is so unnatural that we respond by eating more than we really needed in the first place. All those years of trying to lose weight exacerbated my already unhealthy relationship with food. I was an emotional eater from a young age. Dieting casts an even bigger spotlight on food and all the accompanying rigidity. All those forbidden foods only made me want them more. Once upon a time, food was fuel for my body and a pleasure to my senses, but it became so much more. Now it's supercharged with meaning and burdened with responsibilities it never signed up for. Besides, the widely swallowed message that no pursuit is holier, more righteous, or valiant than the pursuit of lost pounds fostered unnecessary self-hatred in me that took years to undo. Every weight loss program, no matter how positively it's packaged, whispers to you that you're not right, you're not good enough, you're unacceptable, and you need to be fixed. I wish I could go back in time and convince the adolescent girl I was to accept herself just the way she was. I'd tell her that she was ready already, and she'd know what that meant. I'd tell her that every second she spent thinking about weight loss was shaving a minute off her life. I'd warn her that the bigger the deal she made out of eating less, the more she'd want to eat. I'd beg her, from the floor if necessary, to cry more, cry as hard as her bellyache was deep. Today, I can look in the mirror, and regardless of the shape, size, weight, or texture of my body, I can see myself exactly as I really am and still feel motivated to build a life of greatness around this body. I don't feel like there's a crucial piece missing, that piece being thinness. I've also vowed never to consciously try losing weight ever again. And make no mistake, there's no unhealthy complacency in this approach. I will continue making efforts to eat more healthfully. I'll continue to explore foods of good nutritional quality. I'll continue to address with curiosity the reasons I eat in the absence of physical hunger. I'll try to respect my body while strengthening it. I accept my body and try to be as healthy and happy as possible while fat. Hey, maybe some of my healthy habits will result in weight loss anyway, but that'll just be another naturally occurring change like any other, like muscles forming in response to a repeated activity, like graying hairs, like beginning to menstruate or stopping. I will not be watching the scale. In 2008, I appeared on the Today Show, and beforehand, the producer requested that I provide pictures of myself at different stages of my life. As I was digging through a box of old photos, I came upon the picture of myself with the inked out hips. Remember this one? Obviously, I couldn't see the true shape of my body beneath the black marks, but I paused and studied my 15-year-old cheekbones, chin, torso, and upper arms. That's strange. I thought this was my fat picture. I carried the photo to my kitchen table, covered with a damp cloth, and finally rubbed away the crescents of black ink that recontoured my hips. It came off easily. The picture was like new. I couldn't believe what I saw. Underneath the ink, there was nothing. This is the girl I tried to correct. This is the girl who thought she was deformed. But I remembered this picture. I remembered hunching over it alone in my bedroom, making delicate corrective strokes on an embarrassingly disproportionate girl. What happened to the hips? Those big goiter-like hips I fantasized about cutting off with our electric Thanksgiving turkey knife. Where were they? I remembered seeing them there. I know I did. I looked ridiculous. They were so awful, I'd been willing to do anything to get rid of them. I was determined to diet those hips off my body before I got stuck with them for life. There was nothing wrong with the girl in the picture. I just wish somebody could have told her. All right, so what is this monstrosity? This is a fake book, and it's looking a little worse for wear. It's been around for a few years. I've spoken with it several times, so yeah, it's not looking so great. But I'm going to read you a chapter from Read My Hips that explains what it's all about. If I can find it.
Do you want any visuals up there while you're reading?
Not necessarily. You can get the book cover back if you want.
It's just easier if I turn it off for a little bit.
Okay, that's cool.
Or maybe not.
All right, this chapter is called Fat Is Contagious. There was a time when I rode the public buses of New York City nearly every day, to and from work at least. Overall, my experience showed me that most bus riders prefer to sit rather than stand. That is, unless they have to sit next to a fat person. I've been on buses that filled to an inhumane capacity with commuters packed in like desperate refugees or sows to the slaughter. Still, the seat beside me remained empty. I once watched a woman tolerate being wedged between a foul-smelling man with roaming hands and a perspiring giant with a hairy armpit an inch from her face, yet she staunchly refused to collapse comfortably into the seat available at my side. Now, to be fair, she might have been enjoying the feel-up, but judging by her expression of disgust and the dirty look she kept shooting to me, I think not. Why wouldn't she just sit? What had I done to deserve the evil eye? Had I contaminated an otherwise perfectly good seat by situating my deadly girth beside it? Some people don't even bother to be subtle. One woman attempted to sit beside me and made a big show of squirming uncomfortably before crossing the aisle in a noisy huff. She sat beside a sympathetic stranger with a shaking head and rolling eyes, to whom she churlishly complained, "Some people got a lot of nerve." I can understand how the seat beside a large person might be viewed as less desirable than one beside a slimmer person for reasons of bodily comfort. A tiny person might leave the seat seeker more room to move in his or her own space. Oftentimes, I too choose to stand when I spied an open seat between two people that looked like it wouldn't comfortably accommodate my large body. I simply didn't want to be squashed in the middle. What I don't understand, however, is those times when seats are at a premium, like during rush hour, and very few people were willing to suck it up and sit next to me in a seat on the aisle. That's right, an aisle seat where there was no wedged between factor. Even I found it infinitely more comfortable to sit in an aisle seat beside another large person with one of my ass cheeks hanging over the side than to stand for 40 blocks being jerked clumsily to and fro in high-heeled boots. When it wasn't adults refusing to sit beside me, it was their children of 4 and younger, already imbued by the media or their parents with the unarticulated but unmistakable code that fat people are bad. Bad, dirty, poor, stupid, sick. I watched, saddened, as children twisted and whined at their nanny's sides when it was suggested that they take a seat beside me. Sometimes I actually got to witness the process of this unfortunate indoctrination. I remember an as-yet untainted child approaching the empty seat beside me and climbing guilelessly into it, grinning, all cheeks and chiclet teeth. Her mother snatched her away and suggested that she sit over there instead. When the little girl asked, "Why, Mommy?" her mother was dismissive and uneasy. Now, while my hips and my ass may be wide, trust me, they've never bled so far outward that I couldn't accommodate the feathery body of a 3-year-old at my side. The way people act, you'd think fat was contagious. Over time, I couldn't help wondering what other riders were thinking when they chose not to sit next to me on the bus. At that moment of decision, to sit or not to sit next to the fat girl, were their thoughts crystal clear like typewriting across their brains? You don't want to sit next to the fat woman because A, she might smell like bratwurst, B, her excess sweat will rub off of you and stain your good blouse, or C, it'll be a lot less comfortable than standing. Or were their thoughts more like a swirling purple vapor of vague collected precepts? Fat, bad, icky, undesirable, diseased, avoid, stand. Then one afternoon I was inspired to launch an experiment, to engage in an act of performance art of sorts. I created a fake book cover using my home computer. Some rectangles of color here, a change in font there, a borrowed barcode, some clip art of a cartoon fat woman on a shuddering scale, and voila! I churned out a highly convincing nonfiction book jacket. I wrapped it around a newly purchased biography, and after a little tugging and folding and fun with transparent tape, I held the book out before me. My heart swelled at the sight of it. My cheeks grew warm. My God, it looked so real. For several weeks, as I rode all over Manhattan, I worked my way through Fat Is Contagious, or rather, whatever cleverly cloaked tome I was currently reading, one 20-minute ride at a time. Even when I appeared completely engrossed in its pages, I was aware of the dozens of people who strained their necks doing double, triple, and even quadruple takes to read and reread its cover. Wherever my book was in clear public view, someone inevitably noticed. It says, "Fat is contagious, how sitting next to a fat person can make you fat." One doctor's discovery of the direct correlation between her sudden weight gain of over 100 pounds after a long bus journey seated beside an obese woman, and the eye-opening research that followed. The author is Kimberly Cox, PhD. That's not my name. It's the name of a girl in junior high school who used to tell me I danced funny. Authored with the physicians and scientists of the Pomona University Center for Obesity Studies. And there are fake reviews on the back, too. Some people appeared absolutely stunned, mouths comically agape. Still others couldn't conceal their absolute horror. Many looked just plain dumbfounded, a little goosed perhaps, and undeniably confused. The looks alone were priceless, pure entertainment. Once in a while I received a smile, but I'll never know which ones were pitying my perceived stupidity, or like a particularly handsome man peeking over the top of a Wall Street journal with a knowing twinkle in his eye, seeming to congratulate me on a cleverly executed hoax. On 2 separate occasions, I spied women sitting opposite me, jotting down the title and author on the back of a phone bill or a drugstore receipt, scrawling hastily between surreptitious glances from beneath an overhang of hair. I wondered, were these women seeking to learn which trendy nutritional supplement would protect them from the perils of infectious fatness? Or were they burning to write a venomous letter to the author, verbose in its feminist ideologies? One day, I overheard a young woman on the bus phoning a friend, making no special effort to keep her voice down. "Cheryl, it's me. I'm on the 79 bus, and I'm sitting across from this woman who's reading a book called Fat Is Contagious, How Sitting Next to a Fat Person Can Make You Fat." "No, I'm serious." "Yes, I know, it's mind-boggling." "Should I ask?" "Oh, okay, well, can you check Amazon for me?" One middle-aged man sat beside me, took one good look at the book cover, and literally ran to the back of the bus. After witnessing a wide variety of entertaining reactions to Fat Is Contagious, I finally received one concrete answer to my original question. What are people thinking when they choose not to sit beside me? I got an answer that was true, uncensored, and specific. One woman responded out loud on behalf of everyone who'd ever intentionally avoided, snickered, or sneered at a fat person, giving a real voice to so many of those riders still tethered to the handrails in standee silence. And ironically, it all happened before I'd even managed to pull Fat Is Contagious from my messenger bag. I just finished a long day of jury duty, and all I wanted was to head home and lose myself in a good book. I climbed onto the bus and sank into a seat on the end of a row of 3. A statuesque, capable-looking woman with skin like cocoa powder sat on the other end. I was rummaging in the bag on my lap when I heard a belligerent voice spit, "Excuse me!" I looked up to see another woman glowering down upon me. I'd classify her as an older woman, but I couldn't be sure of her age. She had haggard features that might make you believe a woman to be older than she actually is. She was tiny and slight, in an oversized coat that hung heavily from her narrow shoulders. Her skin appeared tough and slightly yellow, and the auburn hair that showed from beneath her woolen cap looked brittle and lusterless. She scowled at me through Coke bottle glasses. I had no idea what she wanted. "Yes?" I asked. She pointed to the middle seat. A fringed triangle of my shawl had fallen into it. I reached down to lift it into my lap, and she quickly snapped, "Oh, never mind." She turned to the woman on the other end of the row and spat, "If some people won't lose weight, they should have to pay for 2 seats." To this cranky little woman's dismay, she encountered no support. "What are you talking about?" the seated woman replied in a melodious Caribbean accent, which I am not doing very well. "There's plenty of room for you in that chair. And what are you saying, lose the weight? There's nothing wrong with this lady. She's just fine the way she is." 2 plump women sharing a family resemblance and identical ponytail holders sat snugly against each other in seats across the aisle. Their eyebrows shot up beyond their bangs. "Oh, no, she didn't," they chorused. "Did that lady just say you need to pay for 2 seats? Who the hell she thinks she is?" The self-righteous little woman, I'll call her Ms. Hostility, sensing her viewpoint was unwelcome in the back of this particular bus, moved toward the front. Seconds later, it seemed she'd engaged a stranger in conversation about me. Or the stranger did so with her, because I heard Ms. Hostility argue, "Well, she should want to lose weight for her health." Stranger. Here I thought I'd been minding my own goddamn business. But just like that, my weight had become the sizzling debate du jour on the M15 bus. All right then. If the idea behind this woman's confrontation was that all fat people are hurting themselves with their poor habits, and further, that society should step up and stop this mass self-destruction by any means necessary, including malice masquerading as tough love, then why aren't more combatant women hovering over slender people on the bus and berating them for the cigarettes in their shirt pockets, the martinis on their breath, or the excessive stress lingering on their furrowed brows? Why haven't these crusading souls made it their business to fight self-destructive habits across the board? Why aren't bus riders asking other bus riders outright if they have regular checkups and health screenings? And why aren't they glaring down their noses at those people who answer in the negative? After all, it's about helping people recognize what's best for their health, right? The Caribbean lady reached over and put a hand on my arm. "Don't you listen to her," she said in a hush. "She's just jealous. She wants to be young and pretty like you." I knew my new friend was right. I wouldn't have traded bodies with that unhappy little troll for any amount of money. And I wanted so badly to tell her so. I was growing weary of taking yet another hit for the fat team in noble silence. I was tired of letting people skate by, saying whatever they felt like about my private body, anytime, anywhere, in front of anyone, all the while grinding my teeth on overrated grace and eternal forgiveness, replaying in my mind that old mommyism that I shouldn't lower myself to her level by being just as nasty. My ire was way up, and for a good reason. I wanted to say something acidly clever, just plain mean. No, I'm not Mother Frickin' Teresa. And here's what I was thinking. I wanted to tell her she looked like a rat. A sickly, underfed rat, crudely ejected from an overcrowded consumption asylum. A 19th century trash picker just turned out of the workhouse. I wanted to rub it in her face that I was robust and pink and lusty, that I was luscious and plump and smooth as a peach, that I looked like a biblical cherub in the nude, and that she only wished she did. I wanted to tell her she was the last person who ought to comment on the state of a person's health based on the person's appearance. I wanted to thrust a chubby finger in her face and force her to listen as I talked about chunky Olympic softball player Crystal Bustos and all the fat guys who participate in the annual Big Man Run in Worcester, Massachusetts, with every runner weighing in at a minimum of 200 pounds. How well would Ms. Hostility compete beside the big men? And all the other fat runners across the country, male and female, participating in Clydesdale and Philly running clubs, respectively. I wished Ms. Hostility could meet Jennifer Portnick, a certified aerobics instructor in San Francisco, 5'8" and 240 pounds. Would Ms. Hostility be able to keep up with Ms. Portnick? What would she so authoritatively say about the health of Ms. Portnick or Ms. Bustos if she saw one of them sitting on the bus? Ms. Hostility certainly wasn't the first person in history to suggest that fat people should lose weight for their health. Every physician I've ever seen and an uncle with only the best intentions believed the same and told me so. But why should a complete stranger on a bus be so deeply concerned about my health? It's as hackneyed an excuse as they come. I decided against engaging Ms. Hostility in a debate. Part of me would have relished a cross-examination of her motives, but I was too tired to excavate, too weary to peel away the health argument and find out what bitter, ignorant, heartbreaking belief really lay beneath. I took the high road, but only by exhausted default. The rotund sisters unleashed some verbal digs on my behalf. "You're right, she is jealous," they pumped up. "Just look at her nasty bony ass." With easy confidence, I assured them, what she says can't hurt me. "You're beautiful and they're beautiful," the black woman said, just gesturing to me and the sisters. "I'm not very skinny myself, but I'm beautiful too." We all nodded at one another and smiled. "You look stunning, tall, healthy," I told the kind woman. "We've all got good, sturdy genes, and there's nothing wrong with that." A growing crowd at the front of the bus forced Ms. Hostility back our way again. She hovered directly above me and glared, stubbornly avoiding the empty seat at my side. I decided to resume what I'd been doing when I was so unpleasantly interrupted the first time. I pulled Fat Is Contagious out of my bag, and with intentional drama, I widened my eyes mockingly and raised the book slowly, spookily in front of my face, floating it over my nose and mouth. Ms. Hostility and all my allies noticed this quiet, curious performance and leaned forward to read the book title. Suddenly, laughter and applause broke out from all sides. The quarrelsome Ms. Hostility made a sour face, turned on her heel, and spurned us for the rest of the ride. Now, Ms. Hostility and I got off the bus at Union Square together. We started moving in the same direction at the same time. Even with a bulky, heavy shoulder bag to bear, I passed her, walking at my usual clip, a pace that tends to be frustratingly fast for most of my friends, fat and thin alike. I wasn't trying to outrun her. I didn't have to. Perhaps her delicate bird-like physique couldn't support such a vigorous stride. I went about my business, breathing deeply the air of an unusually perfect day, my legs strong, long, and sturdy. My head held high. I looked over my shoulder only once to see if I'd been followed, and I saw Ms. Hostility shuffling toward the doors of Barnes & Noble. Perhaps she was looking to read a copy of Fat Is Contagious for her health. Thank you.